Hello, I'm the Pink Phantom, and this is my podcast. Join me as I delve into the world of games and gaming, and especially old school RPGs. Together, let's voyage into the astral realm and check out my Phantom thoughts. In this episode, we're going to have my continuing discussion of the book Muster, playing D&D the Wargaming Way, and we're going to have another tale from my Tales of the Dragon Slayers solo AD&D campaign. No call-ins because of the all call-in episode. Thanks for all the heavy call-ins, fellas. Appreciate it. Let's get to it. The next section of Muster I'm going over is taking the XP seriously on page 181. This is going to sound mystical to those completely out of the loop and infeasible to those less so, but I'll just report what I know. Experience points in the Wargaming Way are sacred, intersubjectively existing, and important in the same way that a golf handicap or high score in an arcade game is. It makes the game better when you realize this and treat them that way because of how it affects your personal creative orientation to the game. Being cynical about it, or even worse, intentionally non-legitimate, diminishes the sportsmanship. Respecting experience points means acknowledging that they are a goal-based measurement of real play achievement. It is impossible to gain or lose them for simulative reasons or out-of-game reasons because they track real player performance of the game. The points are precious because wargaming D&D is a difficult game. Your highest score is an achievement, and your current score tallies in the form of still-living characters are precious. Anybody who's put in the work to get a character to second level in a legitimate campaign will know what I mean by the sweat of their own brow. The inauthentic idea that XP is arbitrary, that the referee just decides who gets it and how fast, is poisonous to good game function. Outright starting characters with unearned XP is anathema. I'm not asking anybody to believe in something that is not true, but if it is not true, then my recommendation is to make it so. Stop being arbitrary, stop being easygoing, stop plastering over actual performance with pity points. That is how you make the game feel like something emotionally, by firming up the scoring so it's not theater and is instead as real as any sport. Stop gaining levels just because time passes. Because XP is goal-based, with some extremely minor traditional activity exceptions, it's gained in a fairly chunky way that makes direct how much should you give out per session measures impossible. The answer is that you should give out 0 points per session because nobody should get a single point for just showing up and sitting there. Save a princess or something if you want XP. It's probably fairly obvious why, when I think like this, I also value consistent historical benchmarking quite a bit. There's value to having the points be comparable from session to session, from campaign to campaign, from GM to GM. And I think the realities of the game do support this ideal to a surprisingly solid degree. Exchanges with fellow travelers seem to confirm a certain sense of quantity in what to say 1,000 XP represents. There is some grounding for the concept of scoring legitimacy, just as there is in golf or figure skating, or chess rankings. It's very convenient to abandon the historical benchmarks and do your own thing, but it's also very possible to stick to a common scaling if you want to. So stepping away from the text, we've run into another one of those lines that you see often on social media, on discussion boards, just in the hobby space in general in terms of RPGs, about how to promote characters, how to allow characters to progress, how do they get to the next level for games like D&D that have levels within the game. And in this case, the author is clearly falling on the side of earn the XP. This falls into the same category that a lot of OSR style players advocate for, where they advocate gold for XP. You earn XP for every gold piece you earn. It doesn't matter how you earn it. If you steal it, if you find it, if you take it in battle, gold for XP. He doesn't seem to restrict himself in this book to just gold for XP, but wants to make it by achievement. You accomplish something within the game, and you receive XP as a result. And of course, he is specifically in this section eschewing the entire idea of session XP, XP simply for playing the game regardless of what is or isn't accomplished within a given session, where there is a style of play where you show up, you play the game, and you get XP at the end of the session, regardless of what happened. And again, we see the author comparing to the world of sports that you have a scoring system in every type of sport, and that's how you determine success or failure within the sport. This is how you determine success or failure within the game, is by having a measuring stick that is based on what you accomplish and not simply that you try or just simply show up to play. The author also talks about benchmarking, having a standard that doesn't vary from game to game, from campaign to campaign, or even from GM to GM. And this echoes, in a lot of ways, sections of the first edition AD&D Dungeon Master's Guide, where Gary Gygax talks about that the rules of that tome are to help establish a standard by which those who play the game can play in another game of AD&D with a different GM and a different group, and there would be enough similarities that it's the same game and wouldn't be so different that there would be some kind of adjustment, some kind of misunderstanding as to what the game was and how to play it. So in this very simple 2 pages of text, that's all that was that I just read, the author here is establishing very definitively what he sees as a defining standard to what is wargaming AD&D. So that was a pretty short section. I think there was a lot of meat in there. I had my own say, and given the last few sections of the book and what toward the end here, I think it will, and I hope it will, stimulate some more discussion by others as well. This next section, before I go into this next section, I'm going to go back to page 60 for a moment, in which he talks about the dual merits of the practice of the game. This is from the chapter overview of the game. This wargaming activity has the merits of sport. We practice the entirety of sportsmanship, from social relationships of teams and rivalries to the character building of victories and defeats. It also has the merits of scholastics. Whatever the subject matter of the game, the wargamer learns it inside and out, puts it through its paces in the simulation tools of the craft, and has the potential to derive insight into how things work. And the reason I go back to the section, that little passage, is that this next section is called, What is Sportsmanship? Sportsmanship is a bit of an old-fashioned concept, and while I see people conjuring its name in a fair bit in the sports world, I rarely see anybody explaining its nature in technical terms. By choosing the wargaming way, we choose to partake of this ancient virtue, so it behooves me to give a quick primer on it. Games are ritual spaces where participants enter with an assumption of good faith. Sportsmanship is a form of honor that you uphold in your conduct to the ritual space. It is what allows net positive interaction in a game to occur at all. Where otherwise a state of social oppression would reign, a game allows learning and personal growth, but that requires correct behavior from the participants. Respect other players. Sportsmanship assumes that you are not enemies with your fellow players. To prove otherwise is a breach of honor no less than forsaking hospitality as you've entered the game space under false pretenses. It is something you do to your enemies. You do not play games with your enemies. To play is in fact a gesture of trust and willingness to friendship. Not treating your fellow players as enemies means granting respect, giving space, listening to, and allowing them their own agency. Cherish the trust. When others are willing to play with you and you hold your heart in their hands, even in a small way. Being overbearing in victory or bitter in defeat is a breach of trust you were given when they agreed to play with you. Check your behavior. The other players did not sign up to clean up after you emotionally. You make gains together. Games are not zero-sum activities where one's victory is another's loss. You engage in the game together to learn skills and build social capital. To act otherwise is to become a tool of exploitation or a short-sighted reaver. Feeling better at the expense of others is short-sighted, sociopathic behavior. Dragging your social circles down by asking your friends to grant face for dishonorable behavior is worse still. The proper social space for gaming allows players to participate in ways that would be risky and disinhabited in ordinary social spaces. You are allowed to lose without loss of face and win without lessening your peers and learn without submission. But that depends on the players upholding the social attitudes called sportsmanship. Learn it. It's a core adult skill in a complex society. All this might make it seem like sportsmanship issues are regular problems in D&D, but that's not actually the case and is usually not talked about at all. And the vast majority of the time, we just organize ourselves effectively without any issues. Having an experienced social leader in the group helps, as does having a generally adult play group, as one might expect. There are a few mild what not to do scenarios that seem to crop up in gaming culture, so mentioning those as sportsmanship problems to look out for might be useful for perceiving the big picture. Bitterness and defeat. D&D is played against arbitrary scenarios and luck more than other players. Sometimes players blame their setbacks on the referee, which frankly is not okay when this fellow player has put a lot of work into preparing the game. Trying to make them feel bad for something entirely ordinary, you lose a lot in D&D, is not sporting. Putting down other players. The play group in D&D is a team with team dynamics. Sometimes players react to this kind of environment by bullying others. As far as I know, this is basic monkey brain social programming, a shortcut to group unity by defining an in-group at the expense of a scapegoat. Recognize it and consciously stop it. To do otherwise is to fail the code of sportsmanship. The code does not recognize some kind of pseudo-participant status where you allow a person to sit and break pizza with you, but you still oppress them. Insisting on being right. A gamer who thinks that being right is more important than being respectful does not understand sportsmanship. D&D involves a lot of debating, so treating every debate as a social threat or simply being obsessively monofocused will end the game in short order. Learn to let it go, learn to be wrong, and modulate the disagreements. Compromise is not dishonorable. It is a sign of respect for the other side as a participant, even when you disagree with them. Refusing emotional support. This one's tricky because our social attitudes towards emotional intelligence differ so between various cultures and subcultures. You cannot dictate to other people about emotional engagement, and trying to do so will only cause more anger. You are a better judge than I am of what is constructive sportsmanship in helping your fellow players deal with their feelings of frustration, self-doubt, and anger engendered by engaging in sports. The general principle is not abandoning people, not blaming them for having emotions, and keeping lines of communications open. Affirming a false consciousness. Social groups uphold self-evident truths for their members, and a gaming group is no different. By close interaction, you form an echo chamber that reinforces shared ideas. To avoid creating and upholding an insular intellectual environment, a group should strive to encourage critical thinking, intellectual flexibility, and a variety of viewpoints. Failing to do so runs the danger of forming a social clique that loses touch with external reality. A true war game cannot be performed unless your working group is capable of acting as a clearinghouse of ideas. The gaming table is like a cultural saloon or an academic venue in that regard, not about sermonizing an established truth, but rather about discovering conclusions. Stepping away from the text, I'm not sure exactly what I can add to that. There's a lot in there, and it's all pretty good stuff. It's all, and I think it's in the book because he wants to be sure that those who may be new to RPGs in general or new to what he calls the wargaming way are clear on what he's talking about and the point of view that he's coming from. I know there's been some questions on some of my call-ins. I wonder why he's putting this in there. And I think because this is a primer, something to read alongside a rule book a way to discuss a culture, a style of gaming, and not just the rules of the game. And a lot of what he just said is, as folks have said before about this and about other things that have called into the podcast about other things I've talked about and that they've responded to. It have said it tends to be this way when people play with friends, and I think that's very true, and it seems obvious, a lot of it. And I think there's an idea that people talking about bad actors who don't do those things is how the hobby sometimes gets a bad name, or certain segments of the hobby get a bad name. Certainly, there are groups that accuse each other. This group does this group does that, and a lot of the this and that are things that the author is talking about not doing. And if you recognize them, stop doing it. Don't do it. So, but I think it is appropriate in a book like this that is meant for what it's meant for to be a primer on playing the game this particular way, and in some ways RPGs in general, in a world where a lot of games are being picked up more and more online. You don't know who you're gaming with. The time when gaming was somebody got a boxed set or a set of hardbacks with D&D rules, and they went to their friends and said, look at this neat game, or somebody heard about the game and they said, oh, that's a good game, we'd like to play, and they acquired the rules. And so you were gathering a group of people who already knew each other. While that may be still the majority, I don't think you can say it's the all, even vast majority norm anymore. And the fact that, and I don't talk a lot about what Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast and stuff are doing because people get nuts about that kind of stuff. But the fact that they are, whether you believe it's right or wrong, whether you believe they'll succeed or fail, the fact that the people who own D&D do seem to be moving more and more to set their space where their product is engaged with and consumed the most in an online space, I think says a lot about what the current status of gaming is and how it's being played. And I think a great deal of that was accelerated during the pandemic when people were encouraged to stay at home, and yet they still wanted to game, they still wanted to play, they still wanted to interact with the world. And this was how they did it. And they became more familiar and more comfortable and better with the tools that allowed you to do things online. And so it's become more accepted. It's become maybe not standard, but not unusual. So I don't think that talking about this social aspect and the way he talked about it and saying things that should be maybe absolutely apparent to anyone is unnecessary, or I don't know, strange. There may be those who think that it is, but I think that for the world we're in now and the way that the gaming world has been developing for quite some time, that this is good, and that it's good to have something like that in the book. Now, maybe you will disagree with the way he says it, or maybe take some disagreement with certain points, but I think having that in the book is a good thing. So I am going to cover one more short section. There's a couple of sections left of the parts of the book I'm going to cover, because at the very end of the book, like I said, it's a glossary and also a section on just some of his, going to some of his actual stories on his actual play. And so I'm probably not going to Not going to go through those. There's a brief history of the game of D&D in here too, and I probably won't go through that part of it. That's probably the last 50 pages. So, page 188. This little short section. I'm going to finish up with this. Scholarship in D&D. There's a small graphic on this page. It's just a little square divided into fours. It starts from on the top left, elite, then beside that, decadent, then on the next row, popular on the left, and then finally, geek. And at the top of the two columns, on the left is mainstream, on the right is exotic, and the rows are the top is high and the bottom is low. So high mainstream is elite, high exotic is decadent, low mainstream is popular, low exotic is geek, and that section is kind of shaded in. So that's beside this section, if you can picture that. All right, scholarship in D&D. Gaming as a subculture is very enmeshed in the historical particulars of the American class society. Gaming is specifically both low class, i.e. new modern age culture not received education, and exotic, i.e. not part of the understood common culture. A major example of the American concept of geekiness. Geekiness arises to prominence in the early 20th century when popular culture in general emerges, reflecting the already existing struggle to define the normative culture within high society. Gaming slips entirely naturally into the geek box around the mid-century, alongside comic books and other underwear-sniffing perversity. That's such a random. Moving beyond the text, that is such a random phrase to slip in there. All right, let me get back to the book here. It shows how complex the world is that the above story is entirely parochial to the United States. Different cultures with their different trajectories through the 20th century can only at best copy American attitudes in a superficial monkey-see, monkey-do fashion. Here in post-classicist Finland, gaming, when it arrived in the early 80s, slotted in as one of those literary hobbies that college students and educated nerds like. Something in between theater and literature, but dynamic young punk stuff that the adults will happily have you take the lead in. I'd been going at it for a decade myself before I learned on the internet that American role players generally identify as working class and consider their hobby to be childish and vaguely shameful, pretending to be an elf, as a D&D marketing campaign memorably put it in the double aughts. The implication, clear from an external perspective, is that gaming culture traditionally and routinely abashes itself to conform to the concept of geekiness. I'm not saying this about just RPGs in comparison to other geek shit, but rather for all of it. Wake up, you are the Western civilization now, for better or worse. The supposed high culture died on the battlefield of the Somme, as they say, but what remains is but infertile bones you lift above yourself. Time for you to pick up that lantern of enlightenment yourself if somebody's going to. So in case you're wondering what all this has to do with the virtue of scholarship in D&D, I think that D&D is exactly the kind of cultural project that has been most affected by the institution of geekiness. Succinctly, how can you be ambitious about your scholastics if you believe that the hobby is intellectually trivial? I've said many things critical about Gary Gygax in this book, just in passing, but I'll say this for the man. He consistently saw, believed, and said that gaming was valuable, worthy of being engaged as a serious intellectual exercise by ambitious adults. He sure sold out like a minstrel, but the D&D he personally practiced in the 70s seems to have been a serious adult wargaming pursuit, not a game for children. The succinct scholastic program. Another big topic in a book full of big topics, but I can at least point out the bold strokes. This is what I see when I look at D&D, and what the game asks me to study and understand via its activity-oriented wargaming pedagogy. Theoretical military science. The game's inherently detached from the study of any specific historical context. What remains, then, are the underlying structural patterns of conflict in general. Pre-modern society. Ostensibly rooted in a 70s pop understanding of medieval, what the game is really about is our understanding of pre-modern humanity in general. Myth, legend, religion. How magic works? What are the laws of fairy? The game travels through dense layers of cultural lore in complicated ways that beg for mastery. Adventure literature. Just a general literature studies tour de force in the way that we write and understand literature, and bricolage that material into gaming scenarios. That is not nothing, and I don't really know what else to call it, but a general concern with the virtue of scholarship. To play good D&D is to study, game it out, and learn. Moving beyond the text, I think it's obvious from the previous discussion of sportsmanship, and this brief overview of what he sees as the scholarship of D&D in a wargaming way, that he sees this as more than just a game. It's more than just a pastime. It's more than just a leisure activity, that there is something bigger to it, that there is something to learning, there's something to exploring, to experiencing a different place, a different time, one rooted in wargaming concepts, one rooted in conflict simulation concepts, one rooted in pop culture, one rooted in adventures, written adventures. I see it as something akin to the pulp novels and magazines of the early parts of the last century. That he's talking about it being something equivalent to that, a way to enjoy adventure and a way to explore different cultures, different ideas, different ways of looking at the world, different times, and more than just playing a game with friends. But then it is also that. And so he advocates this idea of scholarship coupled with sportsmanship as a way to experience a different world. And I think there's something in there, as we discussed in some previous episodes, about the way people look to use RPGs to lose themselves in a different world, or to explore a different world, I guess I should say, rather than lose themselves, because lose themselves sounds like something different than exploring and discovering and adopting a different mindset. So that's really about it. I don't know exactly how else to express what I'm seeing. I think that covers it mainly. There's one more section to go in the book, and then that'll finish up my coverage of Muster. So again, for those of you that have been giving me feedback, whether it's through audio files sent on Gmail, or sending me audio files through Discord, or through Google Voice, or through SpeakPipe, and I haven't gotten anything through Spotify for podcasters in a while, formerly Anchor. But if you've done that as well, I do still check that. All those ways to contact me are in the show notes, and I will be repeating them at the end of the show. But those of you who have, thank you, and I look forward to what you have to say about Muster in the future. One more thing I want to add before moving on to the next segment of the show, something that occurred to me a little later after I recorded the previous part. I think in terms of the scholarship aspect that the author is referring to in Muster, I think it falls, usually in a role-playing game when people make decisions what their characters are going to do, it falls somewhere along the lines of either this is what makes sense for the system. That's the reasoning behind it. This will make sense with the system. This is the best way to attack it through the system. And a lot of that has to do with what we talk about in terms of a player skill aspect to the game, understanding the system and how to translate that into actions within the game. And the other side of making decisions is what my character would do. And sometimes that excuse can be used to just do something that is silly or frivolous or even stupid, depending on the circumstances, because you're just playing up some wacky aspect of a character personality. But it can also be a reason to make a suboptimal decision that still makes sense within the game world. And I think the scholarship aspect that the author is talking about in this book falls somewhere in between, where you're not, because you're exploring the world and you're making decisions based on the world and not necessarily the system. So, for example, if you were playing a role-playing game that was set in a Western setting, U.S. Old West setting? Is it being played within a realistic setting of what it was actually like, or is it being played within the setting of what you see in old Western movies and TV shows? Because that's going to change your behavior. If you're playing in a more realistic aspect, you're going to be very judicious about getting into a gunfight and how you use your ammo, because the gun you're carrying only has 6 bullets in it. And if you run out of bullets, you have to take time to reload, and that gives your opponent an advantage because they could come after you while you're reloading. On the flip side of that, if you're playing in a game that is more emulating the Western movie or TV show aspect, those guys don't tend to run out of bullets unless it's just narratively important that they do. So you could continue to just blast away at an enemy, and it'd be more about rolling the dice and checking your skill, checking your ability to use a gun versus their ability to find cover or use a gun. So that was just one more thing I want to put in there, that scholarship aspect kind of falls partially within that role-playing element of what you do, how you handle situations, that it's based on the genre or the trope that you are trying to emulate within the game. All right, now we'll move on. And now, more from my solo AD&D RPG campaign, Tales of the Dragon Slayers. In the evening, as they grow closer to the fort, Cudgel, Prier, Nantor, and the 2 clerics that were returning to the fort from the party's keep have an encounter with werewolves. Because werewolves are chaotic evil, and Prier, the paladin, or former paladin, is lawful good, the minus 35% for him being for the difference between their alignments will cancel out Prier's 35% bonus to reaction from charisma. And because the group that Prier is traveling with is composed of good creatures, there will be a minus 5% to the reaction roll for that associated group. So let's see what the encounter reaction is for the werewolves. With a 46 minus 5, that's 41. That's uncertain but 55% prone toward negative. We roll again. We get a 52, which means that they are going to attack. So now we see who is surprised. Is the party surprised? The roll of a 4, they are not. What about the werewolves? With a roll of 3, they are not surprised. Now we roll for the distance of the encounter. This is a hilly and wooded area, so it'll be minus 1 per die on the 64 rolling for distance. And we got a total of, let's see, we're subtracting 1 from there, subtracting 1 from there. It negates those 2 dice. So we're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 inches away. So they were relatively close in terms of distance. And now let's see how many werewolves are there. It's going to be 3 to 18. And we get 14 werewolves attacking the party. So roll initiative. The party gets a 4, and the werewolves get a 3. So the party will get to act first. Let's see where the werewolves' hit points are. They are a 4 hit dice creature plus 3. So 4 hit dice, 8, 16, 17, 22 plus 3, 25 hit points apiece. And finally, let's see if the reason they're attacking is because their lair is nearby. It's 25% chance. This will make a difference in the mixture of what the wolves are in terms of male, female, young, and how the males and females react to someone being so close to their lair. So 25% or less, they're in lair. And it is 27%. So it is not a lair group. This is just a pack of werewolves out hunting at the beginning of the evening. In addition to the leveled characters, the party also is composed of 4 archers who were men at arms for Prier and Michael, who are accompanying them. These are longbow archers, so they will not be able to fire from horseback. So they will dismount to fire. Normally, they would get 2 attacks, one at the beginning of the round and one at the end, but since they're taking time to dismount, they will simply get 1 attack on their initiative for the rest of the party. Nantor is going to cast a slow spell on the wolves as they charge. Cudgel is going to cast Magic Missile. Prier is going to charge them with his lance. One of the clerics has a Ring of Mammal Control and will attempt to use that to deal with what they see as a group of wolves attacking. And the other cleric is going to cast Bless on the party, giving everyone a +1 to hit. So first we're going to roll for the archers. None of them have any magic. Actually, none of them have any magic arrows, but we are going to roll to see if their arrows would at least hit, but they won't do any damage if they do. Got a 6, that's a miss. A 10, that's a miss. A 12, that's a miss. An 11, that's a miss. They're shooting at the werewolves who are armor class of 5. The 3rd level cleric's Ring of Mammal Control does not work. He's not certain if that's because they overcame it, or if it's because they simply don't affect them. He simply knows it does not have any effect. The slow spell will affect up to 11 of the creatures because Nantor is an 11th level magic user, but they do get a saving throw versus spells of, they will be saving as 5th level fighters, and that will mean that they will save on a 14 or better. So here we go. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 saves. So 7 of the werewolves are slowed. The other 17 will be at regular speed. So the archers missed. So Prier will charge. His lance is not magical, but we'll roll to see if he hits anyway. And he misses, he whiffs. And that leaves Cudgel, who will fire off a magic missile at one of the wolves and do 2 points of damage. Even at half speed, the slowed werewolves will be able to attack this turn, so all the werewolves will get an attack. We're going to figure out their targets. They will either be targeting the archers who are on the ground, or they will be attacking the characters' horses, since they are the lower attack, the lower level of those characters. And then in the next round, we'll see if they try to leap up and attack the characters on the horses. The archers are armor class 8. All the horses are armor class 7. The werewolves will be hitting the archers on a 7 or better, and the horses on an 8 or better. So we've got 4, 5, 9 potential targets. So I'll roll a d10 with each attack to see who they hit. So this is going to be an archer, and it's a 14, so it is a hit. They do 2 to 8 points of damage. It's going to be 3 points of damage to an archer, and that particular archer only had 3 hit points. That archer is down. Next attack is going to be on another archer, but it's a miss. This attack is going to be a hit on Nantor's horse. No, I'm sorry, Cudgel's horse. And that's 4 points of damage on that horse. 4th attack. It's going to be a miss on one of the archers. 4th attack. That's a miss on one of the archers. 5th attack. That's a hit on an archer, doing 2 points of damage. 6th attack. That will be a hit on an archer. And that archer goes down with 4 points of damage. This is a hit on another archer. 7 points of damage. That kills that archer. This attack will be a miss on an archer. This attack will be a hit on that archer. And 4 points of damage. That puts that archer down. All the archers are now down. So with the archers overwhelmed, the last 5 wolves are definitely going for the horses. That is a miss. That is a hit on the 5th level cleric's horse for 5 points of damage. That is a hit on that same horse for 6 points of damage, but it's still upright. That's a miss. And then the last attack, that is going to be a hit on the 3rd level cleric's horse for 4 points of damage. So back to initiative. The party, a 3. The werewolves, a 4. So with the slow spell, only 7 of the wolves will get to attack. The first one attacks the 3rd level cleric's horse and hits for 8 points of damage, and that kills the horse. The second one attacks Nantor's horse and hits for 4 points of damage. The third one attacks Nantor's horse and misses. The fourth one, Nantor's horse and misses. The fifth one attacks the 5th level cleric's horse and hits for 4 points of damage, and that kills that horse. The 6th one attacks Cudgel's horse and hits for 2 points of damage, but that's enough to kill Cudgel's horse. So Cudgel and both the clerics have hit the ground. And the last one attacks, well, there's only one horse left, so he's attacking Prier's horse and hits for 8 points of damage, and that kills Prier's horse. So all of the characters have now hit the ground. Their horses are dead. Now, since all the characters won horsed, they will take 1d3 points of damage each, and they will have to spend the remainder of the turn getting up off the ground. So here we go. For the damage, we have the level 3 cleric. It's going to take 2 points of damage. The level 5 cleric is also going to take 2 points of damage. Nantor will take 2 points of damage. Cudgel will take 2 points of damage. And then Prier will take 2 points of damage. Well, that was consistent. So now we move to initiative again. So we have the party. They roll a 2. And the wolves, they roll a 3. So the wolves will get first go. The first wolf will attack Nantor and miss. The next wolf will attack Nantor and also miss. The next wolf will attack Nantor and miss. The fourth wolf will attack the Prier and miss. The fifth wolf will attack Prier and miss. The sixth wolf will attack Cudgel and miss. the 8th wolf. Future Phantom here. I messed up the recording somehow, but the remaining wolves, the only one hit, it attacked the 3rd level cleric and did 5 points of damage. So Prier discards his lance, which is good because it's not magical, and draws his scimitar and attacks. He is going to need a 15 or better to hit. And he rolls a 7. So now the clerics draw their maces. The 3rd level cleric does not have a magical mace. And they will need, the 3rd level cleric will need a 15 to hit. The 5th level cleric normally needs a 13 to hit, but he does have a +1 mace, so he'll need 12. So the 3rd level cleric, that would have been a miss. Anyway, he whiffs. The 5th level cleric rolls a 13 and hits, doing 2 to 7 points of damage. And that's the full 7. Cudgel would normally need, with no bonuses, Cudgel would need a 16 to hit armor class 5. He has a +4 staff, and because of the pool, increasing his strength, he has a +3 to attack from his strength as well, for a total of +7, which means he only needs a 9 or better to hit. And he rolls a 20. So he hits. His staff is going to do 1d6 plus 12. For a total of, with a roll of a 5, that's a total of 17. 17 points of damage onto a wolf. Which doesn't really matter because as a non-humanoid monster, it is going to be subject to a disintegrate spell. So a save versus spell has to have a 14 or better. And on a 3, that wolf is disintegrated. Poof. Nantor produces a rope of entanglement. This rope will entangle up to 8 man-sized creatures. So wolves are medium-sized creatures, so 8 of these wolves can be entangled. So how many of the slowed wolves will it get? Because they are all sort of in a mass together. So let's see. We're going to roll a d10 and see how many of the wolves that are slowed that it entangles. 6 of the 7 slowed wolves are entangled. So that means that there is 1 slowed wolf that is not entangled and 2 non-slowed wolves that are entangled. So are the 2 previous wolves, previously injured wolves, are they entangled? 1d6, 1, 2, or 3, 1 it is, 4, 5, or 6 it is not. 3, 1 is, 4, the other is not. So we'll just roll to see which one. All right, the first one is entangled. So we have 1 wolf that has been killed by disintegrate. We have 1 injured wolf that is entangled. 6 slowed wolves that are entangled, and 1 uninjured and unslowed wolf that is entangled, leaving 1 slowed wolf free, 3 uninjured non-slowed wolves 3, and 1 injured non-slowed wolf 3. So 5 wolves left, 5 characters, a little more even thanks to the rope of entanglement. So let's roll initiative again. The party rolls a 1. The wolves roll a 6. So the wolves will get to go first. The slowed wolf will get to attack this turn. So we'll go ahead and do an attack. And we'll see which party member they will attack randomly. That is a 20, and that is on Cudgel. That is going to be 6 points of damage on Cudgel. All right, second wolf attack. That is going to be on the 5th level cleric, and it's a miss. Next attack is on, I have to re-roll that because that's not a possible one. 1, 2, 3, Nantor, and that is a miss. There's another attack on Cudgel, but this one is a miss. And then finally, the slowed wolf tries to attack the 5th level cleric as well and misses. So now the party gets their turn. Prier comes in to aid Cudgel, since there are 2 attacking him. And he misses. Cudgel takes a swing at one of the wolves attacking him and hits. He will do a total of 13 points of damage, unless the wolf fails his save, in which case it will just be a disintegration. The wolf makes his save, so Cudgel does do the 13 points of damage, and the wolf is looking in kind of bad shape. So next we have the 5th level cleric lashing out at one of the wolves attacking him and misses. The other cleric comes to his aid and misses. And then finally, Nantor will attempt to cast Charm Monster on the wolf that Prier took a shot at that's attacking Cudgel. And the wolf fails his save, and so that monster is now charmed. That werewolf is now charmed. All right, that takes us to the end of the round. So we roll initiative again. The party gets a 2. The wolves get a 6 again. So the slowed wolf will not be able to attack on this turn. The charmed wolf will attack his fellow wolf that is attacking Cudgel at the orders of Nantor. And on a 13 hits, 4 points of damage. That wolf, in turn, remains attacking Cudgel and misses. The other wolf, the non-slowed wolf that's attacking the 5th level cleric, continues attacking and hits for 7 points of damage. And the wolf on Nantor attacks and hits for 5 points of damage. Now the party takes their turn. Prier. That's going to be a miss. Cudgel. Ooh, that's going to be a miss. 3rd level cleric. That's going to be a miss. 5th level cleric. That's going to be a miss. And now Nantor will attempt to charm monster on... Well, he was going to attempt to charm monster on the wolf in front of him. Let's see. The difference in segments was 4. The casting time is 4, so that spell would have gone off. So, yes, he's attempting to charm monster on the wolf that's attacking him. But that wolf saves. So we go to another round of combat. We've reached the point in the fight where I think it's now appropriate to do some morale checks. And I'm going to do this on each side's turn based on this next initiative roll. I'm doing the wolves as a group. I'm not going to count the wolves who are caught in the entangled rope, either as being in the fight for the wolves, but I'm not going to count them as dead either, so it won't have a positive effect. It won't have a negative effect. I'm going to do the party members individually since they have some high level individuals who will have a higher morale. And so those will be individual roles. So let's start with the initiative. The party, they get a 3, and the wolves, they get a 6. So the wolves are going first, so they will test morale first. Their morale is at a 49, but because of modifiers, they will be a minus 15 on the roll. So they still have a decent chance to make this roll. And they roll a 60%. And so that just barely gets them under, so they maintain their morale. So the wolves will attack, and they'll still remain in combat with the groups with the individuals that they were in last time. They won't switch. So we have 1 on Cudgel, and a 14 will hit Cudgel's AC of 1. And so for damage, that's 4 points of damage. That puts Cudgel at minus 3. We have 1 on Nantor. With a 7, that's a miss. And there are 2 on the 5th level Cleric. A 10 is a miss. But a 15 is a hit. For 5 more points of damage. So now the party will test morale. Nantor, even with the pluses to his die roll, his morale is 149. He has a plus 30 to the roll, so he can't fail. The 5th level Cleric is at a 109 with plus 45 to the die roll. Rolled an 89, so 89 and 45 is 134 compared to 109 is a difference of 25. So that is a disengage. The 3rd level Cleric is at a 99 with a plus 55 to the die roll. Rolling a 75, that will give us 130 versus 99. That's a difference of 31. So that is a disengage. No, I'm sorry. It's over 30, so it's a flee. That's a flee. All right. And Prier is at an 84 with a plus 55 and rolls a 10. So 65, so he stays in the fight. So the 3rd level Cleric will turn and flee. There are no wolves currently engaged in him, so there won't be any attacks on him as he leaves. The 5th level Cleric is going to disengage and leave without any attack. Nantor and Prier will get their attacks off as usual. So Prier was attacking the wolf that was on Cudgel. He rolls a 14. With the plus 2 on his scimitar, that's enough for a hit. And he will do 1 to 8 points of damage. 4 plus 2, that's 6 points of damage to that wolf. So now we have Nantor. Nantor is casting Melf's Acid Arrow at one of the wolves that was attacking the 5th level Cleric. With a 5, he misses. And the Charmed Wolf, Nantor is directing to engage the other wolf that was engaging with the 5th level Cleric. And with a 9, that wolf also misses. In the next round, Prier and Nantor will have to test morale again. There are currently still 5 werewolves left. One of them is under the control of Nantor, and one of them is slowed. So let's go initiative for the party. They roll a 5, and the wolves roll a 3. So, looking at the morale situation with Cudgel down and 2 party members fleeing, Prayer is at plus 85 versus an adjusted morale score of 84. So at this point, he cannot pass. It's just a matter of what actions will he take. He rolled a 31, so that's 115. That's 32 more, so that is a flee result. There were no wolves attacking him at the moment, so he will not suffer any free attacks from that action. Nantor is at 145 adjusted morale score with a plus 60 to the roll. So a potential to fail if it's a high roll. With a 30, Nantor does not flee, does not fail morale. So Prayer bolts. Nantor, seeing this, moves over to Cudgel. This will subject him to attacks from the wolf that's been attacking him, as well as the wolf that is attacking Cudgel as he moves into that area. The wolf that has been attacking him gets a hit for a total of 6 points of damage. And the wolf that's been attacking Cudgel misses. The wolf that has been attacking the wolf that was attacking Cudgel at the direction of Nantor gets a hit and does 7 points of damage, which kills that werewolf. Nantor then lays one hand on Cudgel and another hand on the other werewolf, on the werewolf that is charmed by him, and activates his Helm of Teleportation. Now he is teleporting to his home in the city. It is a place a known location. He only has a 3% chance of not teleporting correctly. If he rolls a 1 or 2, he's going to come in high. If he rolls a 100, he's going to come in low. And with the 61, they safely arrive in the town. The only wolf that has not acted is the slowed wolf. He can only move at half speed. He will not be able to attack this turn, but he is able to catch up to Prayer because both Prayer and the 3rd level cleric are wearing bulky armor, and it can only move at 6 inches. The 5th level cleric has only fairly bulky armor because it's magic armor and moves at 9 inches. But the wolves are faster, so it's going to depend on what happens next as to whether or not they can get away. So rolling initiative again. The remainder of the party gets a 1. The wolves get a 5. Looking at my notes, I had allowed the slowed wolf to actually go 2 turns in a row, few rounds back. So he will not get to act this turn. He will remain essentially with where Prayer is. The other wolves catch up to them, or can catch up to them, or one of the wolves could also catch up to the cleric, 3rd level cleric, although not attack this turn. So let's see, 50% chance if they go to Prayer, or 50% chance if he goes to after the other fleeing cleric. So less than 50% stays at Prayer. And so he moves up to Prayer, but since he moved from far away, he won't get to attack this turn. And the clerics continue to retreat. So initiative again. This will be essentially for Prayer and the running clerics. That's a 3, and the wolves get a 4. So the 2 wolves will attack Prayer. I think I said there were 3. The 3rd wolf is the one that was teleported away. But it was charmed. So the first wolf attacks and misses. The slowed wolf attacks and hits. And that does it for Freer. It really didn't need to roll because he was down to 1 hit point. So Freer is down, and the other clerics have continued. The clerics have continued to run. So now let's look at the pursuit rules to see if the clerics could possibly get away since they've had several rounds to run away. So the base chance is 80%. The pursuer is faster, so that's minus 20%. The terrain is hills and forest, so we're going to give that. Forest is 30%, hills are 10%, so we're going to give that. We're going to split the difference plus 20%, so those cancel out. So it's still base 80% chance of evasion. Size of the parties: the pursued party is fewer than 6, that's plus 10. The pursuing party is fewer than 12, that's minus 20. So we're up to a cumulative minus 10, so we're down to a 70% base evasion. And finally, light available, it's twilight, so minus 10%. So it's a 60% chance to evade, or they will catch up for sure to the 3rd level cleric. And with a 70%, they catch up to the 3rd level cleric. Now, given the disparity of speed, the slowed wolf will lag behind, but will still be catching up some, but the unslowed wolf will be able to catch up in about 3 rounds. So we'll have an initiative roll. 5 for the cleric and a 3 for the wolf. Unfortunately, this is the cleric that does not have a magical weapon, and he swings and misses anyway. So now the wolf attacks, and the wolf also misses. Cleric 2, wolf 1. Cleric misses, wolf hits. And with 7 points of damage, the wolf takes down the cleric. Now, all totaled, that was 5 more rounds. That gave the other cleric another 5 rounds to get away. By this time, the slow spell has worn off, but the other cleric is pretty much free and clear. They won't be able to track him down, and he'll be able to get back to the fort. So the 3rd level cleric and Preer are dead. Cudgel was cut down in combat, but Nantor was able to teleport him away and treat his wounds, and the 5th level cleric was able to escape. However, this does leave some interesting situations, because that werewolf that was charmed by Nantor will turn into a human, and this raises an interesting question, because 2 of the wolves that this group defeated were disintegrated, so they would not have seen the dead wolves transform. The 3rd wolf, the one that was killed by the charmed wolf, that happened just as Nantor was teleporting away. So here's the question: would Nantor have seen this combination of not necessarily paying attention, just grabbing hold of Cudgel and his new ally Wolf and teleporting away? Would he have been around long enough to see it? I'm going to give it 50-50. So 50 or less, he saw it. And with a 72, he did not. So he did not see that transform. So that wolf transforming into a person will be the first he realizes they were dealing with lycanthropes. And, of course, this raises the question of Charm Person and Charm Monster are 2 separate spells, one for humanoids, one for creatures. So I believe that will mean that spell will wear off. So this could raise an interesting confrontation indeed in the morning? And what will the werewolves think of their fellow werewolf being taken away as essentially a captive or a pet? Many things to consider. I hope you enjoyed this rather lengthy combat. But it does raise some interesting questions here at the end. And it was certainly an abrupt end to the career of Prior the Paladin. The opening music of this podcast is Strength of the Titans, and the closing music is Late Night Radio, both by Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech.com, licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 4.0 license. Thank you for listening to Phantom Thoughts. I would love to hear your feedback. You don't have to be part of the show. If you want to contact me and let me know, hey, these are for your eyes only. I just wanted to give you thoughts, ideas, response, and it's really for your eyes or ears only. That's absolutely fine. I'd love to hear from you either way. So just let me know when you contact me. I don't want to be part of the show. There are lots of different ways you can contact me. You can send me an email at phantomthoughtspodcast@gmail.com. And that can be a regular email, or you can attach an audio file to it. You can use the message button on my podcast site on podcasters.spotify.com/pod/show/phantom thoughts. You can contact me via my Google Voice number, 864-209-1441. You can contact me via SpeakPipe at www.speakpipe.com/phantom thoughts. You can contact me on Discord, The Pink Phantom. All this contact information is listed in the show notes of every episode. And thank you for those who call in. Thank you for those who don't call in. I appreciate you listening and hope you'll listen again next time. Until then, I hope you have a great day.